He walked me through all the things that weren't happening consistently in the practice. Patients weren't being recalled appropriately. Staff responsibilities were unclear. Follow-up appointments weren't always getting scheduled, and communication wasn't great. The office seemed to be running on a different set of rules every day, depending on who was there and who wasn't there. And as we talked, I finally asked him a simple question. What systems does your manager use to manage those things? Hello and welcome to the Chris Wolfe Podcast on iCode Media. Today, I first want to start out by saying congratulations to Dr. Terry Geist. Terry is being inaugurated as the president of the American Optometric Association this week. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, Terry. I'm going to be out of the country, but my prayers are with you. I know you got big things. Terry's been a great mentor to a lot of doctors in the state of Nebraska and across the country. So congratulations, Terry. Well deserved. As always, before I get into the discussion today, which is going to be about practice managers, be sure to subscribe to the podcast, write a review, share it with your friends, and support those who support us. The most common questions I get include, what ophthalmological codes or evaluation and management codes should I use? What ICD-10 codes do I need to bill with this CPT code? What CPT codes can be billed together and what can't? And my favorite, how do I manage a patient who has diabetes who comes in for a quote-unquote routine eye exam? These questions really highlight the confusion and uncertainty that serves as a daunting hurdle for providers, makes it more challenging for them to care for their patients and provide those patients with the best opportunity for a lifetime of ocular health and clear vision. That's why we built iCode Education, for this specific purpose. Our mission is to provide optometrists with resources to help you understand disease states, revenue cycles, and billing and coding so that you can put that on autopilot and truly care for your patients. Check out iCodeEducation.com. That's EYECODE education.com. We've developed a premier billing and coding bundle that includes all of our billing and coding resources in one place. We also have a 10% discount code just for listeners of this podcast. Enter the coupon code EYECODEMEDIA22 at checkout. We'd love to work with you. Check out iCodeEducation.com. Nutrition is one of the toughest conversations in eye care because it's invisible. The Life Meter gives doctors a non-invasive way to measure carotenoid status and actually show patients a number. And many doctors use it chairside to personalize recommendations for macular health and overall wellness. And when patients see their score, the conversation becomes easier and compliance goes way up. Check it out for yourself, the Life Meter. So today I wanted to talk about something that's been on my mind recently. And I was reading an article written by a friend, Dr. Tan Mai, or Dr. Tan Mai, and he was discussing the benefits of hiring non-OD practice managers. And as I read through it, I found myself agreeing with most of his points, definitely many of his points. And there's no question that there's outstanding practice managers in our profession who are not optometrists. In fact, I would argue that practice management and management in general and patient care are completely different skill sets. Being a great doctor doesn't automatically make someone a great manager, and any more than being a great manager always makes somebody a great doctor, as an example. So as I finished the article, I found myself thinking slightly about different questions. The question isn't whether a practice manager should be an optometrist or a non-optometrist. The question in my mind is, what problem are we actually trying to solve with a practice manager? I think that's where a lot of practice owners get themselves into trouble. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to visit a lot of practices. Some are thriving, some are struggling, and most and many are somewhere in the middle. And what's always fascinated me is that practices often identify the solution before they've actually identified the problem. This happens in practice protocols. We see it often with widgets, which I've discussed at length, and I know I'll discuss more. It's one of the most popular topics that people ask for, both when I speak and outside of that. Obviously widgets and disease protocols, those sorts of things. But I think it applies here as well. And the office will feel chaotic. Staff members will get frustrated. Patients are slipping through the cracks. They'll be missed. There's missed follow-up. And ultimately, this leads to a doctor feeling overwhelmed. Schedules can be inefficient. We'll see that revenue isn't where the doctor wants it to be. And eventually, the conclusion becomes, well, I need a practice manager. So don't get me wrong. I think sometimes it's absolutely true. But I think we occasionally ask managers to solve problems that aren't really management problems. So I was talking with a doctor a few weeks ago who was frustrated with his office manager. He walked me through all the things that weren't happening consistently in the practice. Patients weren't being recalled appropriately. Staff responsibilities were unclear. Follow-up appointments weren't always getting scheduled, and communication wasn't great. The office seemed to be running on a different set of rules every day, depending on who was there and who wasn't there. And as we talked, I finally asked him a simple question. What systems does your manager use to manage those things? And after a long pause, the truth was really there weren't any definitive systems. There wasn't written recall systems. There wasn't documented patient handoff processes. There weren't protocols for referrals. There wasn't really a clearly defined performance expectation, and everyone was essentially trying their best. They're really good people, but they were trying to make decisions in real time. And I think that's good. I think, you should listen to Dr. Laurie Sorensen about the That's Horrible ability for people to help solve problems. But making decisions in real time about processes that should be in place, that's where things hit a roadblock. So I think that the important part is that the manager really wasn't managing a system. They were just managing chaos. And that's a very different assignment. It's not something necessarily for a manager to manage. I think that's where sometimes we confuse management with leadership. Managers are really valuable. They create accountability, they build consistency, they help execute the vision, they help teams function effectively, but they don't create the vision. They don't decide what kind of practice we're building. They don't determine whether our practice will focus on comprehensive care, dry eye disease, glaucoma management, myopia management, specialty lenses, or, just refractions. Those decisions belong to the doctor. Patients with presbyopia want freedom from readers, and the MyDay Multifocal offers that with excellent comfort throughout the day. We use it in our practice because patients consistently report their vision feels natural at near, intermediate, and distance. And with a breathable daily disposable material, it supports ocular health as well. It's become a strong go-to option for our presbyopic patients, so I hope it's something that you can check out in your practice as well. MyDay Multifocal. If you're ready to stop feeling overwhelmed and start running a safer, more profitable practice, here's the next step. First, book a strategy call with us, Practice Performance Partners. We'll uncover the biggest risks and opportunities in your practice. Then, choose the package that fits your goals. From there, we'll get you launched with confidence, with clear systems, with expert support, and with peace of mind, knowing your practice is protected and set up to grow. Don't wait until something goes wrong. Book your strategy call with us, Practice Performance Partners, today. And one of the themes, and actually, I'll tell you, I see this often when I do workshops where a doctor will send an office manager to a dry eye workshop or an IPL workshop or a glaucoma workshop to try to build the process, but the doctor really has to be involved in that. And so one of the themes I talk about frequently is that a thriving practice doesn't happen by accident. And that's what these workshops are about. They're intentionally designed. Someone has to decide where the practice is going. Someone has to create the systems and define the success. Now, the manager can be involved in that, but you have to establish standards for patient care, and that really boils down to leadership. And I think many doctors unknowingly abdicate that responsibility, and it's totally normal. Again, the point is not to browbeat people. It's just what I see when I work with practices where they're well-intentioned, but the office often becomes busy, and the doctor becomes overwhelmed, and administrative tasks pile up, and the hope becomes that the manager will step in and take ownership of everything. But unfortunately, leadership doesn't delegate quite that easily. Another observation I've made over the years is that we often promote people into management positions without ever preparing them for management. Optometrists are this way, we're this way intuitively in and of ourselves. We may not be great managers. And it's incredibly common in our profession. A staff member is really good, maybe at being an optician. They've been with the practice 10 years. They're loyal. They're dependable. They know the patients. They know the systems. And everyone likes them. So they become the office manager. And the title changes. And then the responsibilities increase. But, very little else changes. There's no leadership training. There's no management training. And so when this happens, that leads to, not even an understanding of HR or financial aspects of the practice and how the practice actually generates a profit. And then everyone's surprised when that transition isn't seamless. And again, like I said, this isn't criticism of the employee. It's not a criticism of the profession. It's just a recognition that management is a profession. It requires its own set of skills. And we shouldn't assume that someone automatically knows how to manage people simply because they've been a great employee. And another aspect of this discussion is that, that I don't hear talked about very often is just that there is an economic portion of management. Not every practice needs a manager. And so I know it's not always a popular opinion, but I think it's true. I think a practice has 3 or 4 employees or even 10 or 11 employees and produce, let's say $500,000 or $2 million. I'm not convinced that a dedicated manager is always the highest and best use of resources. Now, there are certainly expectations, and every practice is different. But I do see practices creating management positions because it feels like the next logical step in becoming a larger organization. And the challenge is that management salaries are real expenses. And those salaries need to generate a return. And if they don't, the practice is simply added overhead without solving the underlying issue. And so in many cases, the better investment may be improving systems, improving staff training, improving communication, improving leadership from the owner. And after saying all that, I'll be clear, I'm not anti-manager at all. I'm far from it. Some of the most successful practice I've seen have exceptional managers. Those managers create accountability, they improve culture, they free the doctors to focus on patient care. They make the entire organization better. But what I've noticed is that the best managers are almost always paired with strong leadership. Steve Rice is a great example of this. I've been to Steve's practices, and the doctors lead, the managers manage, and the doctors provide the vision, and then the managers help execute that vision. The doctors determine where the practices are going, and the manager helps that team to get them there. And so that relationship isn't about replacing leadership, it's about amplifying it, which brings me back to where I started, really. I don't think the most important question is really whether your manager should be an OD or not an OD, or whether or not you should manage the practice or don't. I think the more important question is whether you've built a practice that is ready to be managed. Meaning, have you created the systems? Have you established the expectations? Have you defined your vision? Have you dedicated what kind of patient care experience you're trying to create? And again, this is where I encounter this the most is within building protocols in a practice. And so if those things are in place, a great manager can help transform the practice. Another close friend of mine, Dr. Ryan Powell, Brandon Hunter, those guys have great people in place to help their vision. But if those things aren't in place, hiring a manager may just simply be an expensive way to avoid addressing problems that only the owner can solve, that only the doctor can solve. So I want you to think about that. I hope it was helpful. Thanks for listening. And as always, I will see you next week.